Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are fishing the trusty drop shot. This is one of the best techniques in bass fishing for catching fish, especially under tough conditions. And this video specifically, I wanted to outline the retrieves, the way you want to work this bait to be able to catch fish. These are the primary retrieves that you want to focus on when you're fishing a drop shot. But first, before we get started with the video, I just wanted to remind everybody, if you enjoy this content, if you're watching this video and you're new to the channel and you enjoy this content, make sure that you consider hitting that subscribe button. I'd truly appreciate it. And also like and share. Those are all great ways to support this channel without spending a dime. You know, just a great way to boost the algorithm so I can you know, continue to be motivated to do these videos. So thank you guys in advance for that. But anyways, let's get back to the bulk, the meat of this video. And the first retrieve that we've got to talk about really embodies what the drop shot is all about. A drop shot is all about subtlety. It's all about presenting that bait in a horizontal fashion. It's one of the only techniques that presents a bait horizontally and in a very natural manner, meaning that you know, it just kind of floats along. If you look at natural forage species, especially bait fish, they don't have a lot of like really erratic movement generally. You know, if it's just regular situation, they're just very subtle. They're almost like gliding. Okay, and that's what a drop shot allows you to do. And so this first retrieve is really going to be your go-to. This is the one that if you don't know, you know, what the fish want, start with this one and use it as kind of a base for, you know, a foundation for whatever retrieve you end up evolving to once you figure out what the bite's like. So the first retrieve is just a very simple dragging retrieve. So what we've got here in front of, let me find it, we got the power poles down, and so we've got this, it's like a little high spot, a little hump, and it's got a lot of hard spot on it, a lot of hard bottom on the top of it. And this is a perfect situation for a dragging technique. So dragging, you know, it may seem like, you know, bass want erratic movement all the time, but with a drop shot, you know, a dragging technique where that weight is constantly just dragging on the bottom and that bait is getting action imparted simply by, you know, the weight just kind of walking over all that structure. This is one of the best ways to catch fish on a drop shot because it really presents the bait in a fashion that I think is the most natural. Okay, so you're not really shaking the rod tip at all. You know, the core principle of just a dragging technique is just, you're not really shaking. Of course, I'm stuck on the bottom. I can't believe that. But you're not shaking it. You're just kind of you know, dragging it along. But anyways, you know, dragging technique is really the core of my drop shot fishing, quite honestly. And, you know, the biggest key is really the rod tip being up, and you have to use the right weight. You know, if it's real windy, you're going to have to increase the weight. If it's real deep, you're going to have to increase the weight. You need to use the size weight that allows you, the lightest weight that allows you to maintain bottom contact while you're dragging with your rod tip up. And the reason why we want a rod tip up orientation with a drop shot is because the bait is designed to be above the bottom. That's the whole principle of fishing a drop shot, is that weight is above the bottom. All right, and so if you drag to the side, you're changing the angle that bait is you know, oriented, and you know, you can catch fish that way, but I don't think it's going to be as effective, and you might as well just throw a Carolina rig or something like that. But so rod tip up when you're fishing a drop shot and you're dragging it. All right, so this is the very first retrieve. I'm going to see if I can actually catch a fish. This is a spot that, you know, I haven't been to in you know, weeks, and I'm not sure if they're actually holding here. I see a lot of fish, but they might be all crappie. So another thing to consider about the dragging retrieve is the fact that it's a horizontal technique. So you're casting it out there to a target or a certain area, and then you're dragging it back. Now, a lot of times with a drop shot, it's all about a vertical fishing. So one thing, if I'm fishing vertical, I'm seeing fish on either 2D sonar or down scan or on my active target, that's when I'm going to just, pitch out to where I think the fish is or where I know the fish is. And a lot of times I'm going to hover that bait right above the fish. Okay, you generally don't want to have it below the fish, but right above the fish. And sometimes I might impart some shaking. I might impart some shaking action, but a lot of times all I'll do is just let it sit. Like literally just let it hover above those fish. And if you see the fish kind of start to come up towards it, sometimes I'll just lift the rod tip, okay? Like it's trying to get away from them. I won't impart any other action other than just kind of a lifting action. And then if they don't seem to be interested, I might drop it back down to them, maybe get it close to their nose or something like that, and then lift it up, a real slow lift. It sounds really weird and simple, but it's a very subtle way to catch those suspended fish. And more often than not, I catch more fish with a slow lift and drop than I do with a shaking motion, okay? And a lot of times it's also just letting it sit there, all right? Just letting it kind of soak and marinate right in front of their nose or right above them. That is really, really key with fishing vertically. And a lot of times you're using, well, pretty much all the time, you're using your electronics to visually see the fish. So really you have to read their mood when you're doing a vertical presentation. And that kind of brings us to our next retrieve. It's more of kind of an accent than a full retrieve, okay? Is like, imparting a little bit more action to the bait. So even though I think that a drop shot is all about, that subtlety factor, not imparting too much action, there's a lot of times I'll be dragging a drop shot, okay? And, I'll come up to a little rough spot on the bottom, like the weight's starting to come into some shells or something like that. Or a rock pile, or I see them visually go up to the drop shot bait and not eat it on my active target, impart some shaking motion, and it's more of like an addition, a little customization to a traditional dragging technique than it is its own retrieve, because I'm generally not just doing this the whole retrieve. I'm not just shaking the rod tip the whole way back. It's very easy to want to do that because everybody wants to impart action into their bait, but really it's just, occasionally when I come into, the juice or those hot spots, or there's a fish actually going after the bait, that's when I'll impart some shaking action. But you don't want to do too much. We're talking just a little tiny shake, just enough to get that worm dancing a little bit. So that's more of an addition. But those are pretty much the different retrieves that you want to implement with a drop shot. It's very simple. Keep it simple. Start off with a dragging technique if you're casting to something and bringing it back to the boat, and maybe impart a little bit of shaking here and there. And then if you're vertically fishing, same principle applies. Very simple. Keep it very subtle. Sometimes you're just dead sticking it right above them, and you just never want to really impart a ton of action, okay? So anyways, guys, those are some tips on how to retrieve a drop shot. It's a technique that honestly is not something that I use every single day, but it is a super, super consistent producer of bites, even when the bite is very, very tough. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you drop a comment below if you have any questions or comments, and also make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Thank you very much. I'm going to see you out on the water. Make sure you trust the process.